Hello. Today we're going to talk about this ridiculous movie, The Corpse Grinders. The Corpse Grinders is a movie about people who dig up bodies, grind them up and turn them into cat food. And then the cats have a taste for human flesh. But before we talk about this movie, let's talk about the director, Ted Mikels, with his wonderful mustache. This is a recent photo of him. Well, relatively recent. This is not from the 70s. Anyway, Ted Mikels is yet another one of these independent, ultra-low budget horror filmmakers from the early 70s. He actually, like a fair amount of others, didn't really love the genre. He was just trying to be a filmmaker and make some money, and horror movies with a little bit of shock value would get people in the seats. According to what I read, this was a pretty popular film, even though it isn't talked about today, but at the time it sold a lot of tickets. So let's talk about Ted Mikels a little bit. His first movie was Strike Me Deadly. This is a thriller. Now this one had potential. Actually, a lot of his movies had more potential than they achieved, if that makes sense. Strike Me Deadly was about a park ranger who saw a man kill another man in the park, and then was discovered that he saw him. So a portion of the movie is him trying to run away from this killer. This one was cool at first because you had this pretty intense chase scene. And then once the guy is caught, it goes into this flashback, and then there's like 45 minutes of character development after we already had seen 20 minutes of action. And then there's like no action again until the very end. So the pacing of it was messed up. I wouldn't have minded some character development in the beginning and then get to the crazy chase, but that's not how it was delivered. So that was Strike Me Deadly. I read that some people consider this to be Michael's best film. He said in an interview that this was the kind of film he always wanted to make, and I mean, he made a bunch of movies, but I guess he never really got to make this kind again, this thriller. He made a couple of other movies after this that I tried to watch. Like one was called Dr. Sex. It was absolutely horrible. Couldn't get through it. Then there was another one called One Shocking Moment. And I think that one had Gary Kent, who was in a bunch of Ray Dennis Steckler movies, as the main character. That one was horrible too, which is not surprising since it's not like Gary Kent's super good or anything. Then he did this one, I Crossed the Color Line, which had a very interesting premise. It's basically where a black man's daughter is killed by the KKK, but the man is white passing. But in the movie, the actor is actually white. You can see him here. And they gave him kind of an afro and probably dyed it black and gave him a black goatee. And then in the movie, he shaves off the goatee and then changes his hair probably to what was his normal hair, so that he really looks white, but in reality he is white. So that's not that good. They could have just found a light-skinned black actor that would have probably made it feel better. But anyway, this one also suffered from some pretty bad pacing. This one came out in 1966, and to be fair, it was 4 or 5 years before the blaxploitation movement. So in 1966, there were not a lot of movies with very many black actors, and this movie did have a lot of black actors, just not the lead, which is kind of annoying, at least by today's standards. Disappointing might be a better word than annoying. Anyway, this one, the pacing was off, just like in that other one, and it could have been better, but it wasn't really that good. Plus, the acting wasn't that good. Yeah, so that one was almost good. This one was also released as The Black Klansman, not to be confused with the more recent movie, The Black Klansman. All right, then Mikels got into horror, and he made this, which is probably one of his 2 most popular movies ever, Astro Zombies. This movie spawned 3 sequels. There are 4 Astro Zombies movies. Although this one came out in 1968, and I don't think the second one came out until like 2010 or something, or maybe it was 2000, but it's like decades later. This is a ridiculous poster. I wish the movie was as cool as this poster. Like, this never happens. No giant skull with body. No cut off woman's head. That doesn't happen. Some of this other stuff down here does happen. Basically, John Carradine shows up as a mad scientist who is basically the same idea as Dr. Frankenstein. He's trying to reanimate bodies, and he does. But for some unknown reason, these bodies have like skull heads, but they're like obviously rubber masks. Like, not just like a rubber mask that some cheap effects artist made, but probably purchased at the store rubber masks. There's only 2 Astro Zombies in the whole movie. You don't see them for most of the time, which is probably strategic since they looked horrible. It's literally just a guy wearing a rubber skull mask, okay? The Astro Zombies do kill people, and at the end somebody's head does get cut off, so that was like a little bit exciting. But also, possibly more interestingly, there's a gang in this movie. It's only a 3-person gang, and actually one of the gang members like defects at one point, so it's kind of only a 2-person gang. But the gang is trying to obtain the zombie technology. So story-wise, that part was cool. But overall, not well executed. Parts of it were actually a little bit confusing as well, because there were 2 sets of scientists. One was like evil scientists. And the other set was regular scientists / detectives, I think. A little bit strange. The killing effects are very poor in this movie. Overall, not that good. I would give this one a 5 out of 10. I would give Strike Me Deadly a 5 out of 10 also because of the poor pacing. So this leads us to The Corpse Grinders, which I will say is a little more solid than all those other movies. I give The Corpse Grinders a 6 out of 10. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a cat food company, and they are grinding up people. Now, this is super low budget. The acting of this one is probably a little bit worse than Astro Zombies, which is very unfortunate. But the story is more solid. The whole thing is coherent. Actually, the main bad guy, his name is like Landau, or in the movie. He was pretty good. He was fairly menacing, and he even kind of like yells at the end. Basically, it was a regular cat food company, and then this like partner in the business tried to like take away the funding, so the other 2 guys kill him kind of accidentally, and then they decide to just run him through the grinder, and then like the cats like it more, so they start selling more cat food. Then the cats become like crazed, but they didn't really like expand on that. Like early in the movie, there were a few points where cats killed people by like going for their throat. I think that happened twice. Actually, I think it happened three times maybe. 2 or 3 times. It didn't. I think they attacked the main woman once, and then they killed 1 or 2 other people. Killed this one woman in her sleep, which was kind of messed up. And then these doctors are trying to figure out why the cats are going crazy. And there's a really gross scene where they do like an autopsy on a cat, and they absolutely used real organs of some kind of animal and like stuck them inside the cat's stomach, like the dead cat. I think it was a real dead cat. I'm not sure, but it didn't look fake, and it didn't look like they had enough money to even produce a fake cat that looked that realistic. So I think they used a dead cat and some kind of organs. For some reason, I'm hoping it wasn't cat organs, even though I don't know if that's really any worse than just sticking like pig organs inside a cat. I don't know. It was gross, which to be fair means it was effective if I was grossed out. Also gross were when they fed people into the grinder, which you don't really see it like this. When they fed people into the grinder, out the other side came like actual meat of some sort. And kind of like the Vienna Strangler that we talked about before with Victor Buono. Like, they may not be very good effects on the people, but like, since they use real meat and you're supposed to think that the meat is people, that makes it kind of gory, like de facto gory. Like, you know, you see real flesh. I mean, and in reality, that is a dead animal. So it would look exactly the same as human flesh coming out of this thing. And this whole movie is so gross and dirty looking. Like, half the characters look like, I mean, they're wearing really dirty clothes. The settings are disgusting. The guy who digs up the corpses is just gross. And his wife is gross. And his wife has this little doll that treats like a real person, like a real baby. So that's pretty creepy. So it's a kind of an effective movie. Like, parts of it are really gross. Parts of it are creepy. Everyone looks dirty and disgusting, like filthy, except for like the doctors. They look all right. And I mean, the pacing is good, the action is pretty good, but the acting is bad and most of the effects are bad. So I give it a 6 out of 10, which means that it's like, to me, that's like a passing score. Although I probably wouldn't rewatch it, but it was definitely the better. It's definitely better than Astro Zombies. And I would say it's more effective than Strike Me Deadly. I don't know if I should say it's better, but Strike Me Deadly had that really boring middle section. And I Cross the Color Line had a lot of boring segments too. So this was the least boring and probably the most effective, The Corpse Grinders. This also spawned 2 sequels, and again, they didn't come out until the 2000s. So I guess Ted Mikels in the 2000s was like, oh, well, Astro Zombies and The Corpse Grinders were my 2 most successful movies. I'm just going to make sequels now. Judging by the cover of those movies, I'm sure those movies went straight to DVD. And judging by the covers, they look absolutely horrible. Like, the art on the covers is totally bad. Nowhere near as good. I don't know why they didn't just use like this kind of art. This is a good poster. So anyway, this is yet another ultra low budget movie, which we had a whole lot in 1971. As we've said before, not a lot of major studios making horror movies, but I think the next one that we're going to talk about is a little bit more highbrow than Cats Eating People. So we'll see if I do it in the order I think, but I'll see you next time.